All right, this is Dark Days Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Mike, and joining me today, we got a legend. Richard Newby, RBK of the Full Metal RPG podcast, and also a Johnny Silverhands stunt double. How's it going, sir? How's it going?
Going pretty well. I did that bit, and wasn't sure anybody was actually going to see it. So I'm glad that somebody saw it.
Oh, I was incredibly impressed. You had the lighting, the blue and the kind of purplish glow. So for people that don't know, haven't checked it out, for the last episodes of season 3 of the Full Metal RPG podcast, RBK here dressed up as Johnny Silverhands. It was a Halloween episode, right? So you had the
Yeah,
lighting, you had the sunglasses, you had the silver arm, you had everything.
yeah. We recorded that live on the internet on Halloween, and of course it gets pushed to the internet after that. So it's sort of this weird lag. But yeah, no, I love photography and videography, and I have multiple lights and gels, so I can make things look kind of weird and artistic. And I love cyberpunk. That's my genre. I love that I've got now the nickname and the reputation of Richie Buzzkill. So that's a very cyberpunk name to me. So I really enjoy it. So.
It is, yeah. It's a great name, and for this episode today, we're not covering Cyberpunk, but we are covering Hunt the Reckoning 5th edition, which was announced back in October. And this is gonna be a tough one to cover. There's a lot of divisive opinions, a lot of interesting takes, and I knew I would need somebody that isn't gonna pull any punches when it comes to this new Hunt of the Reckoning and the past Hunt of the Reckoning as well. So that's why we got you here tonight, RBK.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to talk about this. I remember this from back in the day, and I'm very interested to see where they go with this. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, RBK, is there any gaming news you'd like to cover before we jump into this main topic of Hunt of the Reckoning?
For a moment, I want to talk a little bit about the Kickstarter disintegration. We call it the blockchain Kickstarter.
Oh, right. Yes.
Because that to me is the biggest news in like the gaming industry. There hasn't been like a whole lot of announcements of cool or interesting games lately, because everybody's kind of like in hibernation or trying to deal with logistic issues. But
right.
the idea that Kickstarter will now let you run your own Kickstarter seed, but they're still running the back end, that's just it's a weird concept, and the backlash happened almost immediately.
Indeed, indeed. When they mentioned that it was going to be run off of blockchains, I mean that definitely upset a lot of people, right? But this kind of just indicates the tactics that Kickstarter has used for quite some time, where they just want to have as little exposure and as little legal liability for these Kickstarters as possible, right? Putting in the kind of like joke, lessons learned or risks at the bottom of their Kickstarter pages, which Luke Crane who's used to be an employee of Kickstarter, would always not take very seriously, for example. The legal indications that they have no liability if things aren't delivered and the like. It's really been an ongoing strategy for them, and I think this kind of blockchain, I don't know how you want to put it, like distributing out everything to everyone else to do the work essentially is just kind of concerning and unfortunate.
Well, they're definitely going to push the work to everybody else, because most of the people, including our good friend Alan Barr at Gaunt Night Games, are starting their own crowdfunding sites that are independent.
Yep.
Of Kickstarter. And this is something I've kind of wanted for a long time, because like I feel like Kickstarter is kind of a little bit overwrought at this point. They, yes, it's for advertising, but it also feels like, do we really need this site?
It seems to me from the RPG biz, all the advertising is really from word of mouth. Like what percentage of sales are just people scrolling through Kickstarter and finding a game they like? Maybe that happened back in like 2010, 2012, but in 2022, I don't think it's that much. It's really the Twitterverse that's doing all the hard work. So that 10% cut that Kickstarter takes, not sure if it's really worth it. So I definitely respect that. Gallant Knight Games and I know By Night Studios has used Kickstarter, but also has kind of run their own Kickstarters as well. I think that's a good strategy to take, especially because a lot of the infrastructure is already there.
Yeah, I mean, you just need a store that has ability to count how many people are pre-ordering a thing to make if don't they don't come along, then you don't publish it. Like,
Yep.
you need enough advertising momentum to get that number of people, but you kind of like shape that number to make it so it's easy to get, right? You kind of know your audience.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I used to, when I was hardcore into Kickstarter, and when the old Full Metal RPG crew were around, and every episode was like another Kickstarter that I had to like back immediately.
Yep.
Like, it felt like that time period of like 2015 to 2018, like everything was all, chugging along. I used to surf Kickstarter, but now I don't want to even look at the damn site. So
Oof, brutal, brutal. That's the kind of hot takes we expect from you, RBK. So I think that covers the news right there. And why don't we move on to the main topic of the show? So let's talk a little bit about Hunt of the Reckoning. So, we had this announcement, which we're going to dive into in a little bit, but for any new listeners out there or people that want a refresher, I just wanted to talk about what Hunt of the Reckoning used to be. Back when it originally came out, which was in 1999, and then was published until 2004. So Hunt of the Reckoning was a game about individual mortals in the world of darkness that were contacted by the messengers, and then they were given this second sight, which enabled them to see supernatural monsters and magic around them. So, these individuals could just walk into a diner, let's say, or maybe, oh no, they walked into like a stick up, but then they get this kind of calling from the messengers, and they would, through the second sight, see that, oh, that guy over there, that's actually a werewolf. It's a werewolf doing the stick up, for example. That's kind of a trite example, but that's sort of the setup for this imbuing of these mortal beings. And to aid them in their interaction with the supernatural world, hunters, who again are called the imbued, were granted edges, which are powers from the messengers that gave them tools to deal with the monsters that they were now facing. And it's actually very notable that these edges do not commonly affect mortals or the other imbued, which I think is one of the things that really sets them apart from the actual monsters around them. They're not really set up to affect regular people, regular mortals. They really are just geared to be on this hunt, if you will. And Hunter's story was very heavily fiction driven. The source books were about 75% fiction, with this metaplot that was unfolding through short stories and actually message board posts on the so-called HunterNet, which is a name that has not really stood up to the test of time. This metaplot explored humans who suddenly gained these powers, but only if they, of course, had the will to act. And they had to find the other imbued and determine really what their mission was, what they needed to do in the world of darkness, because the messengers really didn't give them much to work with. They would give like one-word phrases and that sort of thing. You might just see a sign or hear a voice, that sort of thing. It's kind of like it's a little bit inspired by They Live, RBK. If you're familiar with that 80s film.
oh yeah, well I pretend to put my sunglasses on, but it's really just because I've seen through the world already. So
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, some of these imbued sought to hunt the monsters, but others would actually try to study or even aid these creatures, which is actually a really stark contrast to the name of the game, Hunter. Some of these characters, like the Innocent Creed, they're more like social workers for individual supernatural creatures in a way. But I guess Social Work: The Reckoning wouldn't sell a lot of copies, would it?
well, I mean, to a certain set, I think there would be people that would want that, but I don't think it's quite the same vibe that the rest of the World of Darkness really gets to. So.
No, definitely not. Um, but ultimately, old Hunter the Reckoning was about the fractious nature of mankind. When you look at these short stories, at these message board posts, these imbued live very stressful lives. A lot of them, they're just blue collar workers juggling that job. They've got a family, and then they've got this secret, preternatural life. And it doesn't take long for that house of cards to just collapse. And their only compatriots are other imbued, individuals that are also sliding into this kind of traumatic stress at the same time. And this creates a lot of ideological schisms between the imbued creeds, which leads to these cells splitting apart. And in that case, if you're just a lone imbued, good luck, because the hunter is probably going to become the prey. Now, we didn't hear anything about Hunter from 2004 to really 2021. Onyx Path never got a license to do a Hunter 20th, and the Storyteller Vault guidance for Hunter was pretty much the same, except they included a couple bullet points that the imbued were now fighting organized crime.
Bizarre choice.
It's a really weird choice. They're like, yeah, it's supposed to be fighting organized crime, corrupt politicians and stuff. And it seemed like they were almost kind of like taking some of the plot points from Werewolf in a way.
It was like Punisher the
yeah,
Punisher the role playing game.
Yeah,
right?
Well, I mean, they're gonna monkey wrench Pentex, right? So like, that's a little bit of a strange. It's a pretty athematic choice as well, because again, their powers traditionally don't usually affect other humans. So they're literally they're just the Punisher. You're right. You're spot on, RBK.
I mean, that's kind of what I wanted from Hunter originally, was like mortals fighting the darkness, right? But you have to have some sort of supernatural angle, at least originally, and then they decide, oh wait, you are superpowered, but you're also fighting organized crime, but your superpowers don't really work except for like the vampire head of the mafia. Like
yeah, it's a strange choice. It's a strange choice, but anyway, that's in the past, RBK, because now in late 2021, we got the Hunter 5th edition announcement, which is shocking, right? Because we were all sitting here waiting for Werewolf, which they've been working on.
It's just completely out of nowhere. Like, why would you pick Hunter? Like, is it the one game you could think of that you could actually publish quickly in this day and age that didn't have a whole lot of social issues?
I think that's the case, RBK. Hunter was the 6th or maybe 7th World of Darkness game to come out. It depends on if you count Kindred of the East in that list. But Werewolf is usually the second, and we've known they've been working on Werewolf. I mean, they were talking about it prior to Vampire coming out, given hints, and we know that they gave out a license to not Renegade, but that the guys who do Kids on Bikes, who are a subsidiary of Renegade. I can't remember the name right now. But I assume the license is with Renegade now. But they've been working on it. They've announced writers, they've done like a couple interviews, but it's not done, and it's still in development. It's not done. And then boom, out of nowhere, Hunter manuscript is apparently complete. They're working on getting the art together, they're doing editing, and it seems like that's going to be game number 2.
That's such a bizarre choice, because it wasn't a very long-lived game in the first place. And they didn't Onyx Path do their own Hunter game as well?
They released a Vampire Hunters Hunted 2 supplement. Now, Hunters Hunted 2 is different than Hunter the Reckoning. It's about the mortal organizations that are, very long-lived. Whether it be the Arcanum with their, studying the supernatural, the Society of Leopold, who are kind of the Inquisition hunting vampires, or the FBI and other government agencies. That's really what it covered. So it didn't have any of the imbued in it. The imbued have been conspicuously absent from all of the Ang's path work thus far.
Yeah, see that's sort of interesting because Vampire Fifth really sets up the Second Inquisition as the big bad, right? As like the your and mortal antagonist. Like, you know, there's so many cameras and everything else that vampires are discovered, and there's all these organizations in government and higher places that are hunting down vampires. Why not do that game instead of Hunter the Reckoning?
I think they kind of have done that game. Let's dig into this and see what the article actually said. And as well, there was a brief I think it was a Twitch stream that Outstar and Justin Achille did, which also filled in some of the blanks as well. We'll kind of spritzel that in. So this is the announcement that we were given, and I think the main philosophical question that we want to answer here, RBK, is this game that they've announced still Hunt of the Reckoning?
Very good question.
Yeah. So according to this article, Hunt of the Reckoning 5th edition will be about hunters. There's no mention of the messengers, no mention of the imbued, no mention of the second sight. And Justin Achille also confirmed that they are not going to bring forward the idea and the story of the imbued into 5th edition. So those guys are gone. That's it. Finito. And
so, yeah, it's not really Hunter the Reckoning.
So, yeah, the plot is just thrown out the window. So now we're like, okay, is this Hunter the Reckoning, or is this just Hunters Hunted with the Hunter the Reckoning name, for example? Well, let's keep reading here. So these hunters are going to form small cells that target the supernatural. And the article, this is an interesting word choice. The article compares these hunter cells to startups, which, yeah, not sure. We can dig into that a little bit later as well as we keep going through here. These hunters, however, are divided up into creeds. Again, similar to the ideological divisions that we saw in Hunt of the Reckoning from the 2000s. And these hunters still have edges. Now, the article is very sparse on details, but Justin kind of confirmed that these edges can range from being supernatural to just kind of like more mundane tricks that these hunters have. So it seems like they're going to be a lot more similar to the Hunt of the Vigil endowments from that game from Chronicles of Darkness.
Yeah, it sounds like you're going to be able to play Zatanna or Batman. So,
yeah,
because you'll have the edge of having lots of money, or you'll be able to do magic or something.
Sure. It seems we don't know all the details, but it seems like there's going to be some range or options with these edges now. If you want to just be a blue collar guy with a pipe that has some street smarts and some wits about them for making traps, let's say, or ways to kind of keep the supernatural at bay, or to be much more overt and super powered. But again, it's all a bit vague at the moment. And these
very vague.
Yeah, these hunters will have some other mechanics. For example, they're going to have drive, which sounds a bit similar to the old conviction. It's really the kind of impetus and mission that they're on to face the supernatural threats. And in addition to that, they will also have desperation. We don't know how these mechanics are going to work, but it sounds like desperation is going to be that kind of a risk mechanic, the risk management that you have to go through with your character, which will kind of ramp up and cause tension releases throughout the game. Similar to, say, Hunger Dice in Vampire 5th Edition. That kind of death spiral design paradigm that they've included.
Yeah, because that's what I was hoping is because the Hunger Dice is such a good mechanic that you have something the equivalent in here that makes it like you can still be highly skilled but still like have consequences.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And that's what we're hoping for a lot of these games. It makes sense to have Rage Dice in Werewolf, Paradox Dice in Mage, for example. And that would be really cool. And having this kind of desperation in Hunter, I think, is a good choice. Yeah, I definitely concur with that. And we'll see how it works out. And the article is also quick to highlight that these hunters are not the same ones that you find in the Second Inquisition, in the FBI Special Affairs Division, or in the Arcanum. You're going to be playing independent and driven operators, whereas those antagonist hunters for the other games they're more like schmoes taking orders, and actually calls them ethically compromised organizations, which I think is actually that's a cool take right there. Saying that these old monolithic organizations, they've been here for so long, but they really haven't made that much of a dent in maybe the Second Inquisition recently, but most of them are not really that effective, which is where your little startup cells can kind of exist and be more aggressive.
Yeah, the idea that okay, so there's these giant organizations that have all this wealth and power, are corrupt and incompetent, and then all these older organizations haven't really been able to do much for the last couple hundred years, and then we're going to come along and we're going to revolutionize hunting the supernatural with our little tiny group of people. That that seems like it could be a metaphor for some industry or another, but I don't know or the world, but I don't know how well that's really going to work out.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they're going with this allegory. I know a lot of startups, which quite famously recently are also ethically compromised. So
from the start,
I don't know if that's really gonna hold up to scrutiny. But again, this is just an initial article. They might just change things. They might tone down that angle a little bit. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, and the article is also it brings up that you might hunt traditional World of Darkness monsters like vampires, werewolves, etc., but maybe you'll be hunting more unique things like cryptids or unknown monsters that you can't really explain. And this is similar to the angle that Chronicles of Darkness took with its Mortals game, and also Hunter the Vigil as well. And I think this is a good idea because when you look at old Hunter the Reckoning, it always had issues kind of balancing the mystery of this world that your hunters were exploring with the literally hundreds of books of World of Darkness canon. You could always have somebody at the table who just start postulating like, oh, that guy we met, obviously he was a vampire, but like, what clan is he? Oh, maybe he was part of he was a Zamitzi. Maybe he was part of the Nagaraja bloodline. And, having that kind of like out of game knowledge really could affect the in-game experience. So, I think adding more mystery is definitely a good tactic. And I know that's something that Justin Achille really pushed for, as well as others, with the initial Chronicles of Darkness launch in 2004. So I think they'll be very successful with that.
Yeah, I think it makes the pool of the World of Darkness larger and more interesting, that there aren't just these like very strict like spheres of influence, that there's this like grime all over the place, and some of it kind of comes to life in a different interesting way that doesn't have like other splat books going along with it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good image right there. That's the grime coming to life. I like it. Now, speaking of grime, RBK, let's talk about art a little bit.
Oh yes, let's
Because
please talk about
so
art.
I mean, do you remember with Old Hunter, there was a lot of consternation about the art in the core book. It was pretty inconsistent, and people thought it was like very ultra violent. That was a common criticism that was levied at Hunter back in the day. And then, of course, we need to say that the source books really changed things and made it much more low down to earth artwork and presentation, which matched the fiction and game design a lot better. So, keeping that in mind, that there has been criticism of the art in the past, how do you feel about the art here in this article? The three pieces that we got, maybe starting off with the van picture.
Yeah. So, well, I just want to mention the first picture, the like top picture.
Oh, right.
I,
Four
I
pieces.
yeah, yeah, I really love this like neon orange, that's the color of the old book with this man looking like above you and in a leather jacket. That's a banging piece. Like I love that piece.
Yeah.
Uh, that's really great. And then we go through a paragraph or two and then we get to a 70s van that's or something. This piece is just so disconcertingly like what is going on in this picture. Like, okay, so we've got a van with a kind of mountain scene on it that's been painted on the side, and then there's a wolf with a moon behind it, and then there's an orange circle around the wolf, and then some kind of like orange kind of like that kind of splattered over the front of the van. Maybe that's blood, maybe that's something else.
Yep.
But they're just like looking at this van. Now the orange circle doesn't even stay on the van. So I'm not even certain what is going on in this picture.
Yeah. So I think RBK, the artist was drinking some tea, and then that's just the tea ring from the bottom of the mug left on the artwork.
And then just turned it orange, even though it was probably clearly made in Photoshop.
Yeah. I'm just joking. I don't want to bag on it too much, but it's a perplexing piece of artwork. It does tell a story, but I'm just not sure what story it's really telling. Is this an investigation, an aftermath of a battle? Seems like one dude's just kind of arguing, so there's not much tension in the photo or in the image, but strange.
Yeah, it's a little strange. It's a little nebulous. It's like it's a lower. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you know more context, and then that's really not how you want like the banging photos that are going to sell your relaunch.
Yeah. Okay, so we start off with a strong photo up top. The van's a little weird. Sorry, not photo, artwork, image. Let's talk about the werewolf, though, dude.
I feel like this is taunting people. I feel like with the fact that they're not getting a werewolf game for probably another 3 years, if I had to guess, because they're probably going to have to rewrite it completely.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a minute, but like, this is actually a pretty great werewolf. Except it's just kind of like, why?
Yeah, they wanted to put a monster in. I wonder if this is cynical, of course. I wonder if they just took a piece of werewolf art and they just put some orange on it. They're like, all right, good, we got another piece. It's a baller werewolf. Like, look at that dude, menacing, taunting me. Oof.
Yeah, it's like, oh shit, it's looking at me. I better run. Like, it's a great werewolf, but why? Why are we showing a werewolf here? Mm-hmm. And I assumed that like World of Darkness was not. I mean, I love that this is black and white with just some spot colors. I'd prefer it if it was just black and white, because I think the old World of Darkness, all being in black and white and to a certain point, was really very evocative. It had this kind of like everything is this like shades of gray and very dark blacks and very white whites.
Right.
Really gave it an evocative feel, and that's what we get with this photo, with this piece of art. But it's a hunter's game, so where's the hunter?
Yeah, good point. Actually, so I mean, RBK, you've seen some Chronicles of Darkness books, and you know that it's black and white and then accentuated with one color as well, and that's the exact art direction we have here. It seems like so. That's just another thing that kind of borrowed, let's say, from the Chronicles of Darkness design.
Yeah, I think they're taking the legacy of Onyx Path and kind of using it a little bit to try and get back, because Vampire 5th was roundly criticized. Now, I don't agree with this criticism that the art was bad in Vampire 5th, and I think it was an interesting choice. I think it was trying to push it in a different direction. I think there was some really cool, this photographic surrealism happening. I don't think they pushed it far enough, but I think it was a much more interesting choice than you would get but I think they were just spending all the money.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely used a lot on the models and stuff that you see in V5. You know, it's interesting when you take a look at that art direction. It has continued into future books um, for V5. You know, when you look at the Onyx Pathwork again, you know, they have a lot of the photorealism. You know, they've got artists like Mark Kelly and Christopher Shy that are really doing some very interesting artwork in that same vein. And I think what they do better than the V5 core book did was having that kind of consistency in the artwork. You know, we look at V5 core book, it's really all over the place. You got some video game artwork, then you'll have some models, then you'll have some recycled artwork, or just some photography that Martin did, you know, on the streets of Stockholm. And individually, a lot of it's great, but it's very scattered
Yeah,
in its
it's not as
style.
cohesive.
Right.
It's not as cohesive as the old like second edition, Vampire the Masquerade, and so the heyday of White Wolf art in the 90s, I think. That was very, even though you had all these other this disparate artists, they all kind of had a very similar art direction.
Right.
And I guarantee you that top image on this page is a Mark Kelly. That looks like a Mark Kelly.
Yeah, it does. You're right.
And then these other ones, I don't know who these other ones are. Like we get to the next image on this page, and we have a hunter. She is in a wheelchair. It's spot colors. Like she's got dog tags, so maybe she's a veteran of one of the wars. But there's just this like mechanical inconsistency that drives my mechanical brain nuts. Where like it's like she's looking off to the side and the wheel's going this way, but it doesn't look like she's going to be able to go very far very quickly because her wheelchair wheels are like turned to the side, and like the AR she's holding with a long barrel is like tucked underneath her, like in her side. Yeah. Like it's not even like in a position where she can like pull it out and like in fire it quickly.
Jammed in her kidney.
If it could even physically go there. Yeah. Like I get there's this impressionistic ink blot thing going on here, but it's just like, did no one think of like, hey, I get you may have used some clip art to like, or stock art to like draw over, but like maybe like pull the gun up a little bit so you're ready to like lower it and fire. Like,
I think it's fine. I think it serves its purpose and gets its point across. And actually, as well, RBK, more than any of the other artwork that they've displayed here, this one really tells us a story, doesn't it?
Yeah. It tells us that she is like actually doing something.
Yep.
Like there's like tension off screen. Clearly, there's something to the right from our point of view. Something's to the right. Like she's like getting ready to go that way. Like there's a movement to it. I mean, I just you can
see she's experienced.
Yeah, she's experienced.
She is a soldier or was a soldier, and there's a lot going on in this image, and that's why I think there's so much mixed tension about this one. From me at least.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, having played Hunt of the Reckoning in the past and having read way too much of the fiction, I do know that there was a similar character who ended up in a wheelchair in the story. And it was, something that happened to him on the hunt. He was an innocent who was trying to help a vampire, and eventually she tore his legs off. So you can have. I'm just kind of bringing that up to illustrate that. This is something that's come up in the past, and I just feel like it's interesting to see how it's changed now with this new edition, and kind of ramped up in some ways.
Yeah, and you're definitely right. And I'm working on season 4 Full Metal RPG in the background. I'm working on it. It's coming soon. Don't call it a comeback. Uh,
You guys are just taking a vacation. It's cool.
exactly. The world is hard, and we need a rest. Um, but yes, I think an interesting conversation about ableism in role playing games is long overdue. We need to talk about. I mean, we talk all the time about racism and sexism, but we don't really talk about ableism as much as we should. And the classic World of Darkness edges and flaws. There's a whole lot there.
Oh yeah.
There's just
Oh yeah. Exactly. That's what I was thinking about. The flaw system is highly ableist, but there if everyone is okay with it at your table, you can explore those things and tackle them and really discuss the issues. However, I understand these are also games and people want to have fun, and it can be a form of escapism, and then people don't want to deal with that, and that is a-okay. I definitely want more people to enjoy World of Darkness games and horror role playing, and maybe using like a consent form or the like is a good way to kind of set those boundaries ahead of time for your group. Because there's nothing worse than you like having an agreement with your storyteller. You guys are both on the same page, but then a player is a problem at the table then. So it's really good to discuss all of that ahead of time.
Yeah. Safety tools are important, kids.
Yep.
Everybody should look into safety tools.
Yep.
Like X card, consent forms, all that stuff to try and come up with a way everybody can play. And that's the most important thing.
RBK, here's a real sad story from PAX Unplugged last month.
All right.
Someone was doing I think it was Nick from Gehenna Gaming was doing a panel about like horror gaming, and then they of course started to talk about safety tools. And the second that came up, 3 people walked out of the room. Not like a group together, just 3 individuals were like, "Nope, I'm out of here." It's kind of just sad that people haven't gotten that memo yet. And listen, not every group needs them if you all know each other, but it's good to have just in case, and especially if you're with people that you don't usually play with. It's just a great way to make sure there aren't any hurt feelings or tension at the table. You can just use the X card or say like, "Hey, wait, let's talk about this," resolve it, and then just keep gaming from there.
I would say even if you know everybody at the table, it's still good to check in before the game, because I'll tell you another sad story. My family pet passed away this last fall.
Oh, sorry.
And she's been suffering for a while, and she passed away. So the next Friday when we were playing, like, there was kind of a mention of a pet getting kind of off screen, and I felt a little twinge, but like it was mostly okay. But it was something that I should have maybe mentioned before the game. Is like, hey guys, can we not tonight with this? Right? I'm feeling this. Like,
Yeah.
But the point of the story is not me. Is the point of the story is maybe even if you know somebody, just check in before the game. Like, hey, what should we do? And I understand that there are people that, feel like they're invincible, but until they go through something, they don't quite understand it. And I think it's up to people that are well informed, like your fine audience, to make sure that everybody is, taken care of.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point. Great point, RBK. But let's get back to Hunt of the Reckoning. So we went off on a real tangent there, and I think that was really because this is something that we're concerned about, want to talk about, but I don't personally have like the knowledge or expertise to really like give you the deep dive and really explain things fully. So that's why we were kind of dancing around the point a little bit during that little discussion. But with Hunt of the Reckoning, we've kind of gone through what we have here. There was also, I mentioned, like a Twitch discussion between Outstar and Justin Achille, which people can check out for more info. But RBK, with everything you've seen, everything you know thus far, is this still Hunter the Reckoning?
I think my it's not a 100% answer, but it's like an 80% like no, this is a different game with the same name on it because they own it, they're going to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because while I prefer a Mortals with guns kind of like fighting the darkness or, a full Mortal game, this, Hunter the Reckoning was about kind of like there was some kind of power directing these and helping them out and giving them the imbued and the second sight and the messengers and all that. There was something going on in the background. This sort of lacks that, so
Yep.
you don't have this overarching meta plot from the original thing,
Yeah.
and that means to me that it's not.
Correct.
But we don't know. So
There could be something. They could pull something out of the hat. At this point, I mean, what have they really kept from Hunter the Reckoning? There's the name edges, which are not the same edges we remember, and creeds. I assume the
yep.
creeds will probably be pretty similar to the ones that they had in Hunter the Reckoning, but we don't know. They haven't mentioned any creed by name, so it could be completely redesigned. That really could be it. Just those two mechanical names and also the title Hunter the Reckoning are the only things that are left here. Perhaps the concept of the fractious nature between the creeds would be there. That kind of makes sense. And that was a big part of Hunter the Reckoning. However, when I look at this, I'm kind of left just wondering, like, what separates this from other, mortals with guns shooting monsters games? What separates this from Beyond the Supernatural, from Palladium? What separates it from Dark Conspiracy, other than Dark Conspiracy's crazy like future thing that's got going on?
Conspiracy X and all
Yeah,
these other like X Files, Hunter
yeah,
games they're out there, and I don't know other than maybe some of the mechanics that we were talking about, like the drive and other dice that are adding, like that's really the selling point mechanically, but I think it's a nostalgia play. As I say, nostalgia is a hell of a drug. And this may be like because they can't go to the bigger nostalgia drugs. Like I can understand skipping werewolf, but why couldn't you have gone to mage instead?
yeah. Well, Mage is a tough one right there. That's
Mage is a tough one, but I think it's easier to do than werewolf.
yeah. It probably is. I mean, Hunter makes some sense. It's pretty simple to make a Mortals with guns shooting monsters game, right? And there are also 3 video games you may remember in the early
Yep.
2000s.
Oh yeah.
So they're leveraging that for whatever nostalgia there is. Man, I mean, Werewolf's a problem, man. They really painted themselves into a corner with the 2 werewolf games that already came out, right? They've got the one werewolf game where you have the Fianna drinking whiskey to regain health. That was a poor design choice right there. And I haven't played Heart of the Forest, but I've heard good things. It's a cool little story. But again, I think it uses all the main tribe and auspice tropes from World of the Apocalypse. So they're in more trouble there if they need to do a full redesign, because they've already established certain things with recent video games, and they can take the bullet. They can say, all right, you know what, we are just going to scrap. We're getting rid of Fianna. We're getting rid of the weirdness of like the Wendigo and the
I
problems with the
think
stargazers, for example.
Well, the problem with the entirety of like kind of co-opting native indigenous cultures into
Mm-hmm.
this like shape-shifting. I mean, that whole thing, like I think to me, I mean, they sort of decided they were going to take the bullet and move to Renegade, right, and their subsidiary to write, to get this stuff going. Like I feel like you just say, look, this is so poisoned and too hot to use anymore. We're gonna start over again with a new meta, and I don't know how you do it because personally, I think werewolves should be a force of nature that dealing with. Once you get past like a certain point, like it's a monster that's supposed to like run around and kill everything. Like that's every werewolf movie, except for like those movies where you're dealing with the transformation, right? The
Yeah,
the initial change.
before they become a force of nature. Yeah, and so this is a complete
Right.
aside, but we were talking a while back after watching some Forever Night that I think the werewolf game that you would really like, RBK, would be like a reskinned version of the Alien RPG. Is that the werewolf game you want?
Yeah, I think that's the werewolf game I
That
want.
would be a
I think
good
I think
werewolf game.
the werewolf as the central protagonist or antagonist is much more interesting. And then you have, I mean, you could have done Hunter the werewolf, right, where you reskinned Alien,
Yep.
and then you're just a bunch of schmoes, and then the werewolf comes around. And to me, that's, I mean, and I understand there are people that are really attached to the idea of the change and the eco message of the original. I mean, I think that's the part you can maybe pull forward as the kind of like Mother Gaia, but then there's still this like cultural appropriation part of this that's sort of hard to,
Right.
hard to
Right.
use.
I mean, I
So
think they, White Wolf and now Onyx Path did a great job with Werewolf the Forsaken, really erasing all of the, not erasing, but separating it from those kind of indigenous cultures and making it more about the spirit world, those interactions. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of harkening back to animism in that game, but making the tribes based around what they hunt and how they kind of have this gameplay cycle of maintaining the territory, I think works pretty well. So there's a way to do it. They just might need to really take the scalpel to the game, and I think that's why we haven't seen it yet. It's just that it's such a problem and needs just so many sensitivity readers for that game. From a plethora of different cultures. So we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll get Mage before Werewolf Fifth. We'll see. We'll see. But I think we kind of answered our questions. Kind of went off on all the tangents there, RBK. But really appreciate you being here on the show, and I really want listeners to check out Full Metal RPG because season 2 and season 3, you guys had some incredible stuff. The politics in gaming episodes were out of this world. The one about like if you should play police, for example, or how that should be kind of portrayed in your game, I think was highly relevant. You guys did a great job. And then politics of cyberpunk, politics of horror, really really incredible stuff. Are there any other episodes recently that you'd like to highlight from Full Metal RPG that people can check out?
thank you very much. I really appreciate, we're fans of each other's show, and I really appreciate you saying the politics in gaming series, I think is one of our uh, most well thought out and best series. So I definitely recommend those. Politics in the West, like the Western is a genre that is very much ingrained in RPGs. It's been there since nearly the beginning, and that's a really interesting one too. Um, we did have one recent last fall was playing in history, like talking about actual historical games with some great guests. So that's probably one I'd say is maybe one of our highlights of the last few episodes. It won't take you much scrolling to get to. So, um, but yeah, I'm working on trying to come back. I life got complicated and I had to kind of put Full Metal RPG on the shelf, but this week I've gotten super amped up and doing this show with you. I'm trying to aim for February to bring season 4 back. So don't call it a comeback.
No, it's not. I mean, you guys just a little hiatus, taking a break. I don't blame you. I mean, there's been times where Darker Days just hasn't had an episode for 4 months, and that's it's just what happens. And when you've been RBK, you've been podcasting for a long time. How long has it been? Like 6 years, 7?
Yeah, 7 years probably with with the show before that I was on before Full Metal RPG that I'm not even going to talk about because it was terrible. And, and those people are never going to listen to this, so it don't really matter.
All right.
But I've been doing this for a long time, and I enjoy philosophical conversations, so that's why we've kind of turned in that direction. And I think it's this genre, this lets us, of RPGs, lets us talk about very interesting subjects in very different ways than you can in a normal talk show about
Definitely.
topics.
Definitely. Good stuff. Good stuff. So people can find a link to Full Metal RPG's podcast in the show notes. Definitely check it out. It's great. And if you want to check out more from Darker Days Radio, you can visit our linktree/Darker Days Radio, or go to darker-days.org to, find out all of our good stuff. So thanks, RBK. Really appreciate it. And, I said this is going to be a half-hour long thing, and it's been an hour. So sorry for taking up so much of your Saturday morning here. But, I think we said a lot of things that needed to be said.
Thanks for having me. And I really had a lot of fun being here. And being on Full Metal RPG, I know what doing an hour and a half podcast when we were going to talk for 45 minutes. So it's not unusual.
I gotcha. And to all the listeners out there, take it easy and have a good night. This has been an episode of Darker Days Radio. Special thanks to Occam's Laser for the intro, outro, and new bumper music from their hit album, 9 Circles. Check out the rest of their work at occamslaser.bandcamp.com.